Hi, Kate here with another video. Hope everyone's doing well. If you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe. Helps me build the channel. I'm not making money from this. I'm doing it as a hobby right now. I hope someday to make my channel as a contribution to activist struggles and leftist struggles. So please subscribe. Helps build the channel. I'm pivoting somewhat with my channel. I'm going to try to focus more like on environmental issues, which I think is going to be very important. The people are openly talking about a looming food crisis. Biden mentioned this in one of his speech in a speech a few months ago. There's some very strange stuff going on with Dutch farmers, and the Netherlands apparently is a huge supplier of the world's food. I was surprised to learn this, and there are in various ways different countries cutting back, diminishing the food supply, global food supply. I don't know why this is. Some very strange things going on, and I'm going to talk about this in my next video. This video is kind of a lead off to that. This is going to be on Nestle's, which is the second largest food supplier in the world. The largest is Cargill, which is based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Nestle's is based in Switzerland. It's a global multinational corporation. One estimate, they make apparently $9 billion a year in revenue, which is pretty large. So it's a huge company. The CEO, the former CEO of Nestle's, famously said that drinking water, that water is not a human right. What he said, technically, what he said is, he said demands to make drinking water a human right are extremist. In effect, he said he did not believe it should be a human right. The idea to campaigns to make it a human right are too extremist for him. He'd rather make money selling what comes very cheap. Commodify water, commodify just about everything. So that's going on. So okay, so in the U.S. today, bottled water first began being marketed in the U.S. in the 1970s. Perrier water was one of the early bottled water brands marketed in the U.S. It originally came from France in 1977. They built that headquartered in New York. Perrier, it was kind of odd. People made fun of Perrier water at the time, because at the time it was widely assumed throughout the U.S. that you could drink water just about anywhere. Tap water comes from the tap for free, or close to being free, and this company, a French company, put a pretentious French label at gourmet water. It was like, at the time, it was kind of direct, like the pet rock fad of the 70s. People were selling rocks as pets. We can just get a rock anywhere outside. It was kind of ridiculous, but the market boomed after that. The market quickly boomed. Perrier water has actually been bought up by Nestle since then, so it's a booming market. Myself, I'm not sure. Now, according to Wikipedia, about 90% of the U.S. water supply is drinkable, of tap water, is drinkable. But the same article adds in all these mineral impurities. It's very ambiguous how safe they are. I don't know myself. I had my water here tastes horrible. I've tap water. I've had it tested a couple of years ago, and as odd, it was the coliform level, at the bacterial level, was low, was below the official harm level, and so was the mineral content, but it was often just barely below. It was just barely made it, and I tried to ask, is this safe? I asked people from the state, is this safe? And I didn't really get a straight answer. It was kind of ambiguous, got a lot of legalese. Like, I still don't know myself. I use the water for cooking and to take a shower and stuff like that, but I drink water throughout the day. I drink a lot of bottled water throughout the day, but I use this stuff like as a store label. I try to avoid Nestle's products as much as I can, although there's no ethical consumption, no such thing as ethical consumption under capitalism. Okay, so Nestle's now global firm. They dominate the bottled water industry. A couple things about Nestle. First, there was infant bottle, the baby bottle. There was a boycott of Nestle's in the 70s. They were aggressively marketing infant formula to Global South, places in the Global South, very aggressively marketing this, and when it was completely inappropriate, getting mothers to switch from breast milk to Nestle's formula at times when it was completely inappropriate. When babies were often hooked on this, and then their mothers couldn't afford to continue with that formula, or the mothers didn't know or understand or weren't able to sterilize the equipment to make the formula properly. Whole series of things, and it was a catastrophe. It's estimated hundreds of thousands of babies died because of this, which is horrific. So there was an activist organization, a non-profit, that they're called InFact. They're still around today. They're renamed Corporate Accountability. They called for and largely led a boycott of Nestle. Nestle's from 1977 to 1984, and I believe it was finally the boycott was called off. Nestle's agreed to abide by some accountability, like ethical advertising, ethical use, things like that. The boycott was called off. I believe it was briefly reinstated and finally called off. So I think by 1980, by the 80s it was called off. But this was a big thing on the left for quite a while back in the day. Okay, so anyway, now big thing, Nestle's is literally privatizing much of the world, so much of the U.S. water supply. It's kind of pretty outrageous. So, a couple things. Yeah, Perrier water came on the market in the U.S. in the 1970s. Booming market. There was a case Aquafina, which is bottled water. It's put out by Pepsi Cola. There was a bit of a scandal a few years ago when it came out that Aquafina is literally tap water. It's literally municipal tap water. There's no difference whatsoever. Well, put up by Pepsi Cola. There's also Dasani, put up by Coca-Cola, bottled water brand. Same thing. It's literally tap water. There's no difference whatsoever. I mean, yeah, water is water. It's H2O. The big draw about bottled water, so see pure, less impurities, less mineral, things like that, which is why people are drawn to it. It tastes better, or doesn't have a taste, but it's not always true. Okay, so the dominant market share, overwhelmingly of bottled water, is Nestle's, and they use horrible predatory techniques. So, some background here. Now I'm going to have to read off my notes somewhat. So, some grim statistics. I got these from InFact, or Corporate Accountability, their website. So the UN, according to the UN, 1.2 billion people, or one-fifth of the world's population, live in areas of water scarcity. And 500 million people, half a billion people around the world approach this. In addition, 1.6 people are facing, quote, economic water shortages, which basically means they can't afford water, decent water. Top of that are the effects of climate change. So in 2016, 37% of the U.S. population were living in drought-affected areas. Also, the water infrastructure throughout the U.S. anyway is not being invested in, and there have been well-publicized problems in Flint, Michigan, and the horrible water there, which Obama made fun of the people there. The New Jersey public schools famously have a water problem, and recently Jackson, Mississippi has a water crisis, and the water system is not being invested in. It's starting to fall apart around the country. Officially, the water is still drinkable in much of the country, but there are growing doubts about it. On top of that, there are climate change. So anyway, yeah. So this corporate accountability organization says there's a mixture, like a perfect storm. There's climate change, decreased investment in water. Water scarcity is up to what they call a perfect storm, opening the way for basically a corporate privatization of the water supply. The EPA in the U.S. estimated that the U.S. needs to invest $400 billion overall in the water infrastructure nationwide, and the U.S. is sending billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine. It's pretty obvious it's going to be pissed away. I mean, the vast majority of it ends up in someone's offshore bank account or in the black market. Weapons end up in the black market, and Ukraine's losing the war anyway. Billions of dollars in this to the military defense, military industrial complex, and not spending, for there are obvious reasons why this is happening, but not spending money on actual people. Okay. Yeah, and famously, the CEO of Nestle, former CEO, an Austrian guy named Peter Brobeck Letnoth, said a couple of years ago, in effect, that drinking water is not a human right. What he said, Snopes fact checkers attack these quote conspiracy theories. Snopes and all these fact checkers, really, their purpose is to protect corporate narratives. Essentially, Snopes said, technically, the former CEO did not say access to water should not be a human right. He didn't say that, but he did say that demands to make it a human right were too extreme, were extremist. So in effect, that's exactly what he said. So pretty horrible. So okay, so Nestle's and others are privatizing the water supply. In 2014, Americans spent 18.82 billion dollars buying what comes naturally for free out of the tap. In 2013, Americans drank over $10 billion of bottled water, generating $12.3 billion in revenue, double that of 2000. So it's a skyrocketing industry. It's been estimated that on the average, people are spending 300 times more on bottled water than they would on the same amount of tap water. Okay, so what's wrong with bottled water? First, environmental impact. There are an incredible number of non-reusable bottles made every year. Something like Americans throw away 60 million bottles every day. For every liter liter of water. Americans throw away 60 million bottles of water every day, and it's estimated that it takes the half-life or whatever of this plastic is 500 years. Like it'll take 500 years for the plastic to fully degrade. And yeah, there's some are being recycled. I don't know. I do take bottles to be recycled. I don't know what they do with them when they are recycled, but it is horrifically wasteful. The bottled water that you drink, it actually takes something like for every liter of water produced, it takes 3 liters of water to produce. It's been estimated. Okay, so millions of gallons of oil are used to make these bottles. Not really sure how much. And some companies are marketing like supposedly environmentally sustainable boxed water. They use these boxes or partial boxes for the water instead of plastic. That's also very wasteful. That also uses a huge amount of plastic, and it's not really an alternative. Something again, estimate in 2008, something like 200 billion bottles were made every year, which is worldwide, globally. So Nestle's is the largest producer. They have the largest market share. Nestle's has 52 brands internationally. They pull water from 40 sites in North America, in the U.S. and Canada. It's environmentally destructive, draws a huge amount of water from aquifers and from watersheds. And Nestle's is making an incredible amount of money from this, while not giving giving nothing back. Nestle's pays often a very low yearly licensing fee in the wells they draw from. Usually it's often around $500 and a fee to a landowner, which is often pretty low. Most bottled water comes from drought zones throughout the country, and there's some cases there in the town of McLeod, California, small town. Nestle's often picks kind of rural, economically depressed areas. And McLeod, an example, McLeod, California, town leaders signed a 50-year agreement with Nestle. Basically, Nestle's would pay 1/64th of a cent for every gallon of water they drew. And then, of course, they turned around and sold it for more than $1 a gallon. If that's not a ripoff, I don't know what is. Also, in California at the same time is experiencing a severe drought, or was at the time, and still is. Nestle's drawing water from the San Bernardino National Forest. Basically drew 36 million gallons from the forest in 2015, in a period which on a permit they were drawing water like say 36 million gallons in 2015. They were doing this on a permit which expired in 1988, and they paid an annual permit fee of $524. This Arrowhead water. This is the Arrowhead brand. They bottle locally in different brands. It's Arrowhead brands, and no one was really keeping track. Or Nestle's and no overseer, no agency was keeping track of the environmental impact. And so there was a fight back from the town. There was litigation going on. There was a local actor, a California-based activist organization. It's called The Story of Stuff. They got their name from a documentary that came, called The Story of Stuff about waste, disposable waste, things like that. So an activist organization was inspired by this, and a grassroots nonprofit says really interesting documentary. They led a lawsuit of this for a long time. I don't know how it turned out. Okay, so the playbook of Nestle's around the country, they target small, rural, economically depressed areas throughout the country. They donate to local Boy Scouts, local sports teams. In Freiburg, Maine, they actually bought baseball diamonds for the local baseball team. They donated. Oh yeah, okay, and it came out. There's a big scandal. Freiburg, Maine. I'm in Maine. It turns out they donated $634,000 to Maine politicians from between 2001 and 2012. So there's a lot of corruption going on. So Nestle's the bottling process is incredibly wasteful. Nestle's and other bottlers drawing incredible amounts of water from aquifers, from watersheds around the country. It's environmentally destructive to forests. They're paying nominal licensing and fees, nominal rental fees, and they're making incredible amount of money pumping, reselling it, which should be basically free from the tap. So kind of insane, and they're paying off local politicians, not always direct bribes, but campaign contributions, things like that. Means, okay, interesting, yeah. So a nonprofit called Food Watch estimator found out there's a big lawsuit going on Freiburg, Maine, which I think was thrown out actually. But Nestle's markets called Poland Springs is the main. So they market as Poland Springs in New England, and it's been a big campaign to get them out of Freiburg, get them out of the town, but so far it has not been successful. As I understand, there's a whole series of articles about around that time. This is around 2014 to 2016. So it came out an organization called Food Watch estimated that Nestle donated $634,000 to Maine politicians. Maine's regulatory apparatus is stacked with former Nestle employees and lobbyists. Like the Maine Public Utilities Commission came out in 2013 when they were about to rule on a water deal. 3 commissioners who were supposed to be in charge of regulating the public utilities. 3 commissioners were considering this case. One was a former lobbyist for Nestle. One was a former attorney, and the other one was a consultant for Nestle. So we had previous governor was. Governor LePage, he appointed who's right-wing, kind of an unhinged right-wing character. A former Nestle lobbyist was appointed head of the state's Department of Environmental Protection. So after decades of neoliberalism, both the federal government and state governments, like the regulatory functions, have been utterly hollowed out. Regulatory captures up the wall, and there's really no credibility whatsoever. Another story, area of Michigan not far from Flint. As of 2016, Nestle's was pumping 1,100 gallons of water per minute from several wells in that area. Nestle's came in, they paid for new ambulances and fireworks for an economically depressed area in that region. Town of Everett. Town of Everett is where not Freiburg, but Everett is where Nestle's bought new baseball diamonds to the school baseball team. It wowed the school superintendent. He was really impressed. They bought equipment, things like that. So it's kind of some of their manipulative techniques they use. Strawberry Creek, California. There's a big fight going on. Strawberry Creek, California is 2 hours east, or 70 miles east of Los Angeles, in its tributary of the Santa Ana River in California. In 2018, Nestle siphoned off some like 45 million gallons of pristine water from the creek and bottled it under the Arrowhead labor. It's on public land. Nestle's paid the U.S. Forest Service and state licensing authority virtually nothing, and they made a huge amount of money out of this. There were huge environmental problems. Conservationists were really upset on Strawberry Creek. There's some creek beds in the area were then bone dry, left Strawberry Creek impaired, had a really devastating impact on wildlife. And in California, there's a struggle for water. So the state is now investigating, as of like 2017, 2018, is investigating whether Nestle's is illegally draining water from Strawberry Creek. In 2017, the state advised Nestle to, quote, cease any unauthorized diversions of water, but the National Forest Service at the same time approved a new 5-year permit to continue draining water from federal land. Like the Fed said, just keep doing what you're doing. State government was getting a little upset. The Fed said, just don't worry about it, just keep doing what you're doing. And critics say for this, for the nonprofit, this Story of Stuff is odd name, but it's the name of a local activist organization. They said, it defies this decision. The federal government defies common sense. It's really devastating to the area. Okay, so finally, as I understand, there was something of a cease and desist order in 2021, and the decision to, I'm not sure of the current, what the current situation in Strawberry Creek is. I think it was upheld. The decision to stop to regulate what they were doing was upheld by the state government, and I don't know the current situation. Strawberry Creek, at the same time, also provides drinking water for 755,000 residents, and it's a habitat for deer, fox, mountain lions, and other animals, wildlife animals. Okay, so there's one big struggle. Strawberry Creek has been a big struggle. I'm not sure of the current situation. I think it was a minor victory for the state of California, but I'm not really sure. A big fight's been going on in Town, Pennsylvania, basically a small town in the Poconos, notably focused on the town of Eldred, Pennsylvania, which is a location of a well bottling facility. There's a woman named Donna Dial, Diehl. In 2015, a group of local citizens basically found or discovered, almost by accident, that Nestle had been active in the town since 2012. And they were testing water with the goal of constructing and operating a bulk water extraction facility. No one was notified when they did this. It was a behind the closed doors sweetheart deal with local politicians. Nobody knew that it wasn't publicly announced. Only when Nestle's opened an office in the local community center that word came out that this stuff was going on. So in the permit, it turned out that in the permit application that was filed with the town, their proposal to drill 2 large wells, which each would pump 200,000 gallons of water per day from the aquifer, which is a huge drain. The water would be bottled in Allentown, Pennsylvania, 20 miles away. This would require 60 truck trips through the town every day, which is a small rural town. It would be a burden on the town. And there are plans to pump this water for 10 years with an option to continue for another 15 years. And this would lead to the removal of 73 million gallons of water over the life of the well. And there's a community uproar. Community town would get very little back from this. Nestle's, of course, will make an enormous profit out of it. There's a community outroar, and it was in 2014 when this was discovered around 2014 or so. In 2014, it was discovered that town ordinance was surreptitiously changed in this township, Eldred Township. The zoning rules were changed to allow water to be extracted in the commercial zone, something which was previously banned. So it was a small rule change, but it opened the way for Nestle's to apply for a permit for extraction, and which until 2014, until this rule changed, it was explicitly, it would have been illegal for Nestle to do this. So the rule, Nestle was allowed to do this behind the scenes, some kind of closed door deal with local politicians. There was a huge uproar. Nestle's would make huge profits with hardly any cost. The citizens group was formed in 2015, and they filed a lawsuit against the town of supervisors, alleging the zoning rules were surreptitiously, illegally changed. They won, actually. In March of 2016, the Planning Commission voted to reconsider the Zoning Board of Elders, and they finally denied Nestle's application. So this was a time when local activism succeeded. Nestle's was blocked, and they left Eldred, Pennsylvania. But they're still doing this stuff all around the country. One reason, yeah, okay, so here we go. So, yeah. And so Nestle's is still doing this shit around 40 locations around the country, draining an enormous amount of water from local aquifers, giving very little back. They're giving money to, like, donating money to sports teams, probably basically paying off a lot of local politicians. They're targeting economically depressed areas. They're really predatory, horrible company. Okay, well, this is just a brief thing. I'm afraid it was a little bit disjointed, kind of an introduction. I'm looking to interview people, especially involved in anti-Nestle's activism. I was inspired to this last year. I saw a woman in Maine speak about some of this campaign. I like to reach out to people and interview them about this. Anyway, so my next video is on the looming food crisis, and hope you'll watch that too. And thank you very much. Bye bye.